Welcome to the Hair Metal Rules Podcast, where we celebrate all things 80s hair and glam rock. Join us as we dive into the world of spandex, big hair, and killer guitar solos with your host, Big J. From iconic bands like Motley Crue and Def Leppard to the lesser-known gems of the era like Lillian Axe and Babylon AD, we cover them all. So grab your hairspray and leather pants because it's time to rock out with the Hair Metal Rules Podcast. Hi everyone, and welcome back to the Hair Metal Rules Podcast. Doing this podcast is a dream come true for me. The artists that have been on recent and future shows are people that I have admired and followed for so many years. I'm not going to lie, talking to them and seeing their face appear on the video chat just makes me so happy. Never as a teenager, playing air guitar to this music, would I have ever imagined one day I would have a conversation with them. I have another special guest on the podcast today. I first heard the band Valentine from an ad in Metal Edge magazine, so I ran out to the local record store and purchased their cassette. I heard the first song, Running on Luck Again, and I was an instant fan. Listeners, it thrills me to welcome the guitarist from Valentine, Mr. Adam Holland. Mr. Holland, welcome to the Hair Metal Rules Podcast. I got some different questions for you today.
I forgot what we said, so that's all new, man. I know all I remember was my Three Desert Island. I'm like, should I say the same Three Desert Island records? I'm gonna say the same.
I don't have that one for you today, so okay. You're in the clear.
Okay.
Okay. My first one is: would you rather have the power to be invisible or to read other people's minds?
Wow, that is a great question. Would I rather be invisible? I think I'd go with invisible. Because you get then you could eavesdrop and find out what's on their mind and have multiple other, find out a lot of things. So I'm going to go with invisible.
Some being invisible would be cool, but you might not like what you might not like what you see and hear sometimes, but it would be cool. They always say being a fly on the wall, but
right.
You'd be an invisible fly on the wall.
Well, same thing, reading someone's mind. I don't always want to know what people are thinking of me. So I think I'm going to go with invisible.
There you go. Okay. All right. What made you become a musician? What made you get interested in music?
I, as a child, I was an early teenager, I guess 11, 12, I don't know what you call those years. I had an older sister who, at the time, sort of was late 70s. She was a couple of years older than me and had all the records of that era, and would, in the morning, would always be just, it was great. That was our house, like, sort of alarm clock. I remember she would play Jungle Love by Steve Miller, like those clocks. I'm like, holy shit, I'm like, what the fuck is going on? Either way, but she would play Steve Miller, she would play Bad Company, she would play Boston, she would play Styx, Foghat Live, I remember that one a lot. Queen, Night at the Opera, all those, Foreigner, whatever was happening at the time. Frampton Comes Alive, I remember that one quite a bit. So, I mean, I could go on and on. All those Led Zeppelin, a lot of Led Zeppelin too. So the music of that time would be blasting in my house in the mornings, not also and other times, but so I got to sort of absorb it. Plus, every radio station, that was the music of the times, like the classic rock station, and that was what got me interested in music. Was with those early records and all those that hearing all that stuff loud, and it was very cool. I enjoyed it. So there you go.
It's funny. When I was a teenager, like I was born in 71, so I was a teenager in the 80s. Right. And when you turn on the classic rock station, it was all the songs that you just mentioned was right. Classic rock.
Right.
But now I got in the truck the other day to run to Walmart, and I was listening to classic rock station, and they played Motley Crue. So right. That makes you see how that's classic rock now compared to what classic rock was in the late 70s, early 80s.
Right. Def Leppard and Journey and like right, Motley Crue, Van Halen is now classic rock.
It makes you feel old.
Yeah, well, we are old. Hey, sorry, I'm older than you too. Also, like U2, they're classic rock. Aerosmith became classic rock. All these bands that were not classic rock then. But having said that, all the bands I just mentioned, the Beatles, the Stones, Who, all those guys too, are still classic rock. Springsteen is still classic rock,
Yeah, still
which is cool.
right. It's still classics. It's now you get a mixture of
Right,
that and older and
right.
new old, I guess you could say,
Well,
for your
I mean,
classic
'90s,
rock.
some '90s stuff is, like Pearl Jam. I mean, I've heard it. You can go. It's yes. The older you get, the more decades pass, things become, classic.
Me and my wife were talking about that the other night. We have lived in the 70s, the 80s, the 90s, the 2000s, the
Right,
2010s. We've gone through quite a few
right,
decades. Just the time frame that you were born, I guess you could say.
right. It's interesting. I guess being an '80s person, I used to look back at the '90s and, but it was sort of like if you're an '80s person, you didn't really love the '90s because it sort of crushed the '80s. Having said that, time has passed, but a lot of that stuff is fantastic. I mean, like God, Pearl Jam, REM, all those, like I mean, so many great bands. Green Day, Smashing Pumpkins. I really love them now. There's so many I could probably go on, and I really love my daughter. I have an older daughter, so her era of music, the 2000s. I love the pop, like The Killers, Paramore, Fall Out Boy. Like there's probably a bunch more I'm missing, but No Doubt. Like I really like that era of rock. There's some good stuff. I actually listened to that.
My daughter liked. She's 25. She'll be 25.
Right. So
She liked Paramore, and
right,
I dig a lot of their songs.
right. So yeah, she's the same age as my daughter. So that's just right. That she grew up. So we got as parents got to hear that, but I actually liked it. I mean, the Killers. By the way, every one of those bands I mentioned are still going strong today, which is so cool to see them all still rocking. I kind of get a kick out of that.
It's nice. It's nice when they, it's just like bands nowadays. They haven't been together for a long time, but they're still. If opportunity knocks, they'll
Right.
get back together and play. Because I know
Right.
I think I heard a commercial, the iHeart Music Festival,
Hmm.
that Paramore was going to be at the iHeart Music Festival, and that's pretty because they kind of weren't together for a while, but they still make appearances and play
I don't know,
together.
but I don't know. I'm not sure if I agree with it. I think Paramore has made records and gone strong. I don't think they've stopped.
Really, I thought at
Yeah,
one time that they had some
I
group
don't know. Maybe
changes or
they might have had,
something.
but either way, their catalog is strong. I mean, they still tour. They played 2 nights at Madison Square Garden, which is unbelievable. They're on tour with Taylor Swift in Europe right now. How about that? So they're doing all right.
Taylor Swift, she's a money girl.
She's a everything girl. She's got it under control.
I saw on the internet day before yesterday. She's one of the top guitarists in the country.
Yeah, I saw that too. I'm not sure. That's I don't read those headlines. I don't know.
I didn't take the time to physically read it. It was
Yeah,
just the black part that catches your eye that you want to read the first
yeah.
few lines
And
of it.
I guess she
But
is a great guitar player, but who knows? I don't. I mean, she's the best everything in the country. Whatever. She's just the top of the top of everything.
so tell me how the band Valentine got started.
So I grew up on Long Island, and so did the rest of the guys in that band. And Gerard grew up in my town, so we started to play together. We had some mutual friends. We started to play together very early, like I mean, like 13, 14, 15. So we were playing like, high school concerts, right? And then as time went on and, you tried to, we knew we were going to do this for real. You try and find the people who, you seek out your common goals. So we met Craig then through another mutual friend. And then somehow at the same time, I think we met Neil first. And then there was a band with myself, Gerard, Neil, and another singer. And by the time like we were like in seniors in high school, we were playing clubs on Long Island like 3 nights a week, which was crazy. We went to school at the same, it was the same time. It was a little rough, but a good rough, but it was rough. So we were sort of off and running, and that singer, I tell you, he was great. We just didn't. He wasn't the right guy for many reasons, but he was really good. He could have been. And then we knew that we wanted to. So again, we needed to find the right singer. And then first we met Craig through another mutual friend who Neil knew, and then also another person who Neil knew, another drummer, had played with Hugo in a Rush band. So Hugo is a great drummer as well. I don't know if people know
Okay.
that, but and when we heard that high kind of voice, we knew that he was like sort of that 80s high voice meets, Lou Gramm, Foreigner, Boston, again, all the music I just mentioned, Hugo's voice fit that criteria. And then he also was like we all were like, let's do it. And right away when Craig and I met, we started to write a lot of songs together. We really instantaneously. And then when Hugo jumped in, I think we wrote our first record. Like most of the songs we wrote off the bat ended up being on the first record. Like Someday, Once in a Lifetime, Naughty Girl, really were some of the first songs we wrote as a group. I mean together. So the chemistry kicked off, and that was how Valentine came to be. So the short story is through the Long Island club circuit, word of mouth, finding out who's who, and that was it took a little while. It was officially solidified in '85, I think. Into '85.
Okay. What was it like getting signed by Giant Records?
It was great. So it's a little bit of a story to that because we originally got signed to Columbia Records. I don't know if you knew the backstory. So we got signed. Once we clicked in that, I said the '86 period. Really, the quick story. We went to California, came back with a wiser bunch of guys, and right away that's when the songs. I said all these things started to happen. We wrote these songs, made some demos, and we were able to get management. That was like, wow, we got real management, and that real management gave us time to develop and write more songs and demo more songs. And our manager managed a producer named Neil Kernan, famous, massive '80s guy, and he's like, I want to be involved. He helped us with the demos, so everything started to build momentum. And then we were still playing in Long Island. It was boy, that was a great time. We had a great buzz. It was just that was a really good period. And then the next step was to showcase for some labels. And a bunch of labels were interested, but you always want that one that says great. So John Mervos from Columbia Records signed us. He's like, he stood up in the showcase like a movie and said, I want the guys, let's cut to the chase right now. We recorded the record for Columbia. So that first
Okay.
record was recorded on Columbia Records. And it was 1988, the times where we didn't see it, but they were starting to change. A new president came into Columbia, and which is typical. I mean, even though you take it personally, looking back, it's typical. They don't want what the old guy did. They want to do what they did. So they let go of a lot of bands. I think we talked about it. Heaven's Edge was one of them,
Yeah.
and we were one of them. There's a couple of bands. So they signed like Alice in Chains, and so you could tell the new sort of chapter was coming, and Mariah Carey, there was a different direction. Having said that, Firehouse and Warrant were out there cranking away. We're like, just put us out there, and either way. Long story short, they dropped us, but they also let go the person, John Mervos, who signed us. John Mervos went to Giant Records and said, let me take this band with me because I signed them. You don't even want them. So they worked. It was fine. They bought the record. So that's how we got indirectly signed to Giant Records through that. But I was the same A&R guy. So, it's not always great to get dropped and re-signed, but it was sort of the same. It was interesting because it was the same A&R guy who had the enthusiasm. So it was all right.
Did you guys ever go to Hollywood? Did you guys at that time? Did you go and play on the strip? Did you like the other bands did, or did you mainly stay
We
on
never,
home?
it was crazy. We never actually played. We went out there we were going to, went out there with our Hollywood dreams because we'd been out there a few trips and we're like, this is the place to do it. But we quickly realized we were competing. It was not a good idea because just living and existing was the priority, not the music. So we're like, let's take what we've seen here, bring it back to New York, just where we can live easily and focus on the music. And that's when things happened. So we did go, we never played. We did a lot of rehearsing and we saw all the usual suspects out there, all the, but no, we didn't. Then it wasn't until we had a record deal that we played out there. And that was pretty cool. The first time we played out there was a thing called Concrete. It was called Concrete Foundations. They had like a 3 day like
Right.
event. I mean, like we played literally. We played with like Judas Priest and Pantera, like George Lynch Extreme. I mean, like there was so many. I can't even think of all the. There was the craziest list of bands over 3 days, and we were like, "Holy shit, that was wild! That was like really a great moment for us." Here we were with all these bands, and none of them were famous. Like Pantera wasn't, Extreme was a little bit known, but not much. All these bands were like, I think Firehouse. All these guys were there, and sort of emerging. It was pretty wild.
I
We were
talked
in the
to
mix there.
I talked to the drummer for Vane a couple of weeks ago, and he said the same thing you did because they were from San Francisco, and he said they just went into Hollywood to play a little bit, see what it was all about, but they were competing against people on top of people on top of people. So
Right,
they actually played San Francisco
right.
and never really went into Hollywood. And I always see, you always think until you start talking to somebody, hair metal bands came from the Sunset Strip, but
Mhm.
that's not the case. The ones
Right.
I
No.
thought,
Well, I mean, that's not some of them. Like a lot of the Poison at the time we were out there. I mean, Poison, Warrant. I don't think Warrant was even like in early 80. We went out there to live. I don't think there was. We actually met Jenny Lane. I think we tried to get him in the band. I don't know with Hugo. We had whatever it was. We met every one of those guys we met. Well, Poison was out there. They were huge in the clubs at the time, and they
right,
had like a lot of these bands had the system wired. They looked great. They had all the flyers, the pay to play thing. They knew how to do it. Pay to play is like you buy X amount of tickets and then promote it yourself. It's a weird little. That's what they call pay to play. There's a whole system
right.
that all these guys had it wired. We're like, we're just going to come in and have to like start from negative. So, but also when we came back to New York, a lot of bands, there was like a wave of New York bands that got signed. Trickster, Danger Danger, Skid Row, Soraya. There was a bunch of, like, maybe there's a couple, even, there was more. So it was like kind of a cool thing to see that happen. We were part of that wave.
So you guys had your own, basically the East Coast. You had your own, not necessarily Sunset Strip, but you had a bunch of bands on the East Coast
Right.
that
It was
were
definitely
they
not the Sunset Strip, but there were great clubs, Lemore's. There was a bunch of like 5 or 6 clubs, and we played them all. Like we rotated, so when we had a good buzz, it was a good time for us. And we were again we had management on the verge of a record deal, so we were like we were it was a good time.
Well, I like all the bands you mentioned, and sometimes I, I don't realize where a lot of the bands were actually from till you
Right.
speak with someone. Like we played with all these guys on the East Coast. People associate the '80s and hair metal, like I say, with
Right.
California, but that's not always the case.
Right,
And
but the same way they associate grunge with Seattle, it's not all those bands are from Seattle, but also like there was, as I mentioned, uh, I always talk of Reggie Wu, who's a friend of I met him back in the day. He was also on. They were signed to Columbia, and worked with Neil Kernon. So we met back in '88. We've been friends since then. But there's a great Philly scene, like obviously Cinderella, Heaven's Edge. There was a couple of bands that got signed out of Philly, and so Skid Row was really more of a New Jersey Philly thing than they were in New York. So was Trickster Pop. But that point, East Coast, I meant, really.
um, I get to talk to Reggie Wu tomorrow. Actually,
Oh, nice. I'm gonna send him a text afterwards. It's good.
let's just say, hey, guy, this guy sucks. Just tell him to make
I
sure
won't.
he
I won't. I'll send him. It's so funny.
tell him he has a lot of problems with recording on his podcast.
No,
So
he's a good
just
guy.
be,
We just actually, I was, we, I have a little. I had a podcast called Band Forever. I've talked to him a few times about his record and his new record, and actually, I think we're gonna work on some songs for their next record. How about that? So we've been throwing some ideas back and forth.
So what are you working on right now?
Right now, I'm actually today. I'm working on some ideas. I'm going down to Nashville next week to write with some people who I used to write with, a friend of mine, one writer in particular. So I'm just compiling some ideas that are, so I can go down there with a bunch of different ideas. But as far as bands, the Steve Augeri band is always working away. We put that record out last year. I put out a solo record just about, in June this year. So that took up that was so that's off. So then there's another project myself, Gerard, and Craig are working on with a guy named Matthew Shad, who's in a band. We're going to call it, I think we're going to call it Sound Mind. So he just has a great voice. He's in a band called Shad, Matthew Shad. But so we're still working. We have a couple of songs we're writing and recording. Just, I don't know, it's an interesting sound. I'm not sure how to describe it. It's not what you think it sounds like. And then, so that's what's kicking around. Then starting to work on another solo record with Gerard. We're always kicking around ideas. So there's always something on the docket of recording, writing. It's always something going on in my brain. I always try and work on something, a couple times a week, record something, write something, get an idea flowing, and so.
Well, it keeps you busy. That's a good thing. I mean, it's nice to see artists that they got a lot on their plate. They got a lot going on. We're still recording albums, still playing with other people, or recording with someone else. You you don't realize, you see that person was in that band that you
Right,
remember, but yet that person's been making music for the last 30 years, just
right,
just as
right,
hard as he can.
right. Well, I think if you're a songwriter or a musician, like, I think Paul Stanley had the great quote, like, I don't think you don't decide to become a musician. You just either are, and it's in you. And as a writer, I enjoy writing. So what's nice about the times we live in, you can collaborate, record something at high quality in your own home,
Right.
or at a studio, very less expensive than it used to be, even in Nashville, the whole thing. And you can come up with a produced product that's really, you can either put it on Spotify, you can promote it so someone can hear it, as opposed to, like, years gone by, you'd write something, record a demo, and who would hear it? Five of your close family, So it's a nice time to be creative, and I enjoy it. I enjoy recording, I enjoy producing, I enjoy writing, I enjoy the whole thing, and I love hearing how it comes out and it changes along the way. And it's nice to collaborate with different people. It's not like, I'm very fortunate that I come across a lot of musicians who, so I have opportunities to collaborate, but it's got to be joyful. That's the key in this time of your life, in this stage. You're not making money from recording music. It's for usually recording music to perform, to promote a performance,
Right.
or it's got to be about just complete joy. So,
Me and my wife went to the Rock and Pod Expo in Nashville a couple of years ago,
oh yeah,
and to a thing called Keel Fest. Ron Keel was putting it on.
how is that?
That was pretty good. It seems like Nashville is a big hub for musicians, because
Right,
I I try to email a lot of people, and try to see if they would come on the podcast or whatnot. A lot of them are based out of
no, a
somebody
lot of
surprising. A
guys,
lot of them
yeah.
are based out of Nashville.
Yeah,
You know,
there's no question. It's a music town, not just a country town, but it's a music town.
I noticed when we were down there, we went down Music Row, where
Right.
Jason Aldean's
Yeah,
bar
yeah.
is, and all that kind. That was something to see, and
That's
on
right.
every corner there was a guy with a guitar, or a girl with a
Right.
guitar.
Right. And every place you walk past in the window, there's a band playing, they're fantastic. So I was a staff writer in Nashville from like 2000 to 2005-ish. That was before it got really, really commercialized, but it's a great town.
I enjoyed it, and Ron Keel had Steeler back together. But no Ingve Malmsteen, of course, since he
So
was.
Ron Keel was in Steeler. That's what it was with Ingrid Malmsteen. And he wasn't he in Rough Cut? Am I making that up?
That was Paul Shortino was in
Oh,
Rough
okay.
Cut, I believe. But yeah, yeah, the first time I ever saw Ron Keel, he was with Steeler with Malmsteen. Of course,
Okay.
Malmsteen went up.
Right.
He's off on his own playing. His kind of music. But Ron Keel, it was neat to see him and trying to get all those guys back together. But my point is that Nashville, like you said, everywhere you turn, even the hotel we were staying in, I think it's great they let five young people come in there and sit on a bar stool and just okay play your original song just for people
Right.
to hear.
Although
That's
people in Nashville,
that's
that's the
so
place
neat.
they want to hear that you can play your own music there. It's cool.
But I'm glad you're still you're doing projects you love to do.
I
Like
am.
my,
There's no
my
question
grandpa
about it.
always, he always told me, do if you do something you love, you'll never work a day in your life.
No, there's no question. It's not work, right? So even all the craziness that we do as musicians and all the, it's because you love it. It's not it's all good. Yes, it's definitely a passion that keeps us going.
Well, what advice would you give aspiring musicians starting in the industry today?
Interesting. Someone else asked me that question. So first of all, I mean, I'd say learn how to record yourself. Learn how to produce a good demo so you can that way you can just always be the guy who can control the ship.
Right.
Learn if you can't do it yourself, find the guys who, just different musicians, but know how to record on software, the drums, the vocals, get it all because this technology is phenomenal. And then another piece of advice I say, like here's the good news about this time we live in a young world. You can make money from different sources, and you don't have to be sitting in an office to make money. So I have a few friends who I have a friend who's a lawyer. Actually, I don't want to say names, but I know a guy who
Sure.
well-known musician who is a lawyer. So like in the background of his doing his regular rock and roll life, he has a side gig, and another guy I know who's a plastic chemical engineer, like who deals with but also a super successful musician. So I guess in this time and age, if you have time, if you're young, let's say maybe have a dual career because the music, if it happens, wonderful. But you can also be a musician for decades, and if you have a sort of second thing happening on the side that supports your music, it takes the pressure off and lets you be, I don't know, I think it lets you be more successful because there are gigs out there that you can record. I don't know. So learn the technology, be able to record your demos and present yourself. Um, and I said maybe have a second sort of sideline income, but not like again a full-time job that's going to suck you out of your passion, but something that can support you in the background.
So when is the last time you played Running on Luck Again and No Way?
With a band or by myself? I played Running on Luck again pretty recently because I had a guitar lesson with somebody in Spain who wanted to know that solo. So I recently played it, but I haven't played it. Last time I played it with the band was probably um, 3 or 4 years ago. Valentine played with um, Night Ranger and Trickster for a memorial concert for a friend. We had a shared friend, a mutual friend, a tour manager, and who was a lifelong friend of all of us. And he passed away, so there was a concert in his honor. Pretty cool. But how many years ago is that? Probably 3, 4, pre-COVID, so 19. So it's been a good.
When when Valentine gets together, do do all of the original members perform? Does Hugo
Not except
sing?
Hugo's. When we play Valentine, it's got to be Hugo. That's no, he's. So yeah, the rest of us and Mike, the drummer we've been playing with since the 2000s, is a guy named Mike Morales, he played with the Steve Augeri band. He played with Dennis DeYoung. He plays with Tommy DiCarlo, and I play. So that he's a touring guy as well. So he's the guy who plays drums with us since 2000. He played with us at Firefest and all those reunions we've done.
So what's your pre-concert routine? What do you have to do before every concert?
Well, I don't have to, but what I like to do, I like
What
to
you like to do?
I
Okay.
tell you the band, the Steve Augeri band, Gerard, myself, Craig, and Adam Augeri, we like to sit, even though it's not necessarily about like rehearsing, but we like to sit in the green room and just play the set like real loose, just like on little teeny practice stuff. just gets your head in the game. And then I like to just have I probably have a guitar on me like 3 hours before the gig, up to the gig. I don't know why I like to just keep it, get my hands, I like to just play guitar a lot all the day. Then I keep it on me up until I go on stage. It's not, I don't know what, it's like psychological more than it is anything else. But that's it, my
Have
hand,
you ever? Oh yeah, getting your hands limbered up, getting
yeah,
ready
but
to.
not like I had to. I could go on probably I'm sure I could just walk on, someone handed me a guitar, but just something about it just makes me, I also like to, I like to go, if depend on, no matter where the venue, about 10 minutes, 15 minutes before we go on, I like to go like on the side in the shadows and just stand there and be like acclimate with the stage. That's the thing. I don't, so even if I'm not going on for 20 minutes, I like to sort of stand behind somewhere in the corner and get the vibe. So
What's the biggest crowd you have ever played for?
the biggest crowd I've ever played for was probably about 50,000 people. I was in a band with Hugo. We were in a Journey tribute band, and we played a thing called Bamboozle, and they invited us to play like sort of, it was sort of like a comedic thing, a little bit of a spoof because Hugo looks so much like Steve Perry. But either way, that was a big crowd, and on that bill was no doubt Third Eye Blind and Fall Out Boy. It was at Meadowlands Stadium in the parking lot. They had two big stages. It's pretty wild.
That's neat. So you were playing with a couple of generations down
Yes, we
people you were
were.
playing with Fallout Boy, and that's neat.
But all three of those bands blew my head off. They were so good. The
Wow.
biggest crowd we've ever played with the Steve O'Geary, we played to about 30,000 in Trinidad. And then we've also played to a good, 12, 13, 14, 15,000 at various festivals throughout the years. And then Valentine, we played a great, holy crap, talk about a great show. Valentine, after we got back together and played Firefest 2 times, we got invited to play this really incredible festival in Belgium called L'Ocracy Festen. And one of the gentlemen who was involved had seen us a few times, was a big Valentine fan, and said, also there was another, do you know Terry Brock, the band FM from the 80s, the
Yes,
English band?
yes.
The
Hmm.
Terry, I'm sorry, Terry was in Strange Ways, excuse me, I'm sorry. He was in FM for a minute, but do you know the band Strange Ways? Ever hear of them?
Yeah,
So
yeah.
Terry, great singer, great friend of ours, helped us on our first record. We've been friends with him for decades. This gentleman was a fan of him as well. So we did like a combined set of Terry Brock and Valentine. And we'd all played together a million times, so we were excited. So that was about 15,000 people. And on that bill that day, so we opened up the afternoon, but on the bill was Simple Minds, Donna Summer, David Byrne.
Wow.
It was like holy and us. We're like, what? It was wild. It was a great, incredible production. That was one of the best gigs I've ever played. So
I was talking about him the other day, and the Talking Heads. We were talking about they were Talking Heads was actually considered punk back in
right,
Hollywood, and they just strange, kind of like the B
right,
52s.
correct,
They
right,
had their own thing going, and but they had a cult following,
right.
that made them big when the 80s came in and videos came in.
Right. I never knew. It's interesting you say that. Like I never knew what to call. Like, what do you call? Like, there's a Sonic Youth, Talking Heads. Like you mentioned, B-52s, even like REM. Like, what? I'm not sure what you call, what classification that is. Like, it's not punk. It's not pop. It's like, is it alternative? I'm not. I never knew what to call it. I always liked all those bands, by the way. I just never knew. I always liked the Talking Heads. They were
It
so.
just
There was right. It was so different.
the person I was talking to, just mentioned, he lived in California.
Right.
They were considered a punk band. It was a whole different. They played, of course, at places that the Hair didn't play at or
Right, right.
whatnot.
It was
And
it was like the opposite of hair metal. So I mean I didn't at the time, when you're a young rock and roll kid, those bands you like put they're not heavy. You don't listen to them. But as you get older, you realized, well, I shouldn't say that. Even all those bands had hits. You knew they were great. They were great songs. But my point is, I didn't really appreciate them till a little bit as I got a little older. All
that's
those
kind
bands I
of
just mentioned.
that's kind of the way I am now. This morning I've been sitting here chopping up podcasts, and I've actually been listening to Yacht Rock Radio on
But
satellite radio.
that's a great. I love yacht rock.
I love the old
No one doesn't. I don't
'70s.
think anybody. There's no one who doesn't like yacht rock. I think. How about that?
There you go. It's funny. Me and my wife, we live in an apartment. I probably told you last time we live in an apartment, but we've got a house. In the hometown I grew up in. We're going to rent, and
Right.
the lady that was there, she got it painted really quick. I think she probably did it herself, which bless her heart, she wanted to get it, to where she could rent it out. But me and my father-in-law have been, sanding and painting rooms last week and listening to Yacht Rock Radio. And my father-in-law, he's in his late 60s, and he's like, yeah, you know what my favorite song was back in the day? I said, what was that? He said, it was a song called Radar Love. I said, you mean
Right.
my golden earring? He's like,
Right.
you know who that is? I'm like, yeah.
Right.
Do you know how many times that song has been, I said, but you won't hear that on Yacht Rock Radio. But it was funny. We were just like anything else. They have a blocks of stuff they play. And we were counting
Right.
how many times we heard Brandy, the
Right.
Sailor Saber, how many times we heard it. But it's nice to
No.
hear that mellow stuff. But to make my point, I appreciate songs a lot now than I did, because when I first half of the '80s, it was Duran Duran,
Right.
Howard Jones, uh, Thompson Twins, till I heard Night Songs by Cinderella, and
Right.
then the rest of it was, and here on out has been hair metal. But
Right.
I
But
like to listen to music now, and I'm like, I hated that song when I was in high school,
right.
but
You know what it was too. As a guitar player, you want, especially as like a sort of a hard rock guitar player. If it didn't have like hard rock guitar, you're like, I don't want to know about it. But then you, like I said, you get a little older. Like you know what I appreciate. I didn't appreciate, or I was like anti. Like I did not that I hated, but Squeeze and like oh my God, Fleetwood Mac, all those like poppy kind of bands of the '80s. But you look back, you're like, now I love both of those bands. I really appreciate the catalogs, the songwriting. Like I mentioned too, REM. I just recently went on a deep dive. I'm like, man, they are like phenomenal songwriters. And you don't at the time. Again, they were not like in the hard rock world. So they were like you just didn't want to dig into it, but when you do, you're like, wow, those are some great songs.
I didn't. Two people, you mentioned people. Two people I didn't realize were great guitarists until I really listened to them now. But the guitar player for the Flock of Seagulls
Oh yeah?
was an excellent guitar player. And when Prince performed the halftime show at the Super Bowl, I realized just what a great guitarist he really
Oh no,
was.
he's always been a great guitar player. Right? He's great.
But
Yeah,
you
no, I agree.
you
Right.
think about that now.
No one knew that he was like like a real lead guitar player, but he's like a, I think he became really famous. He played like My Guitar Gently Weeps at one of the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame like medley concerts, and it was like he went on for like I think with Tom Petty. Either way, there's one recording of him playing, and that's like really famous of him like just going, really digging in. It's pretty cool to see that, you know.
And we were talking last time I was talking to you. We were talking about your Valentine record back there.
Yes,
I've
I'm
got a
still.
couple of I've got a couple of bids in on one on
Oh,
eBay.
really? Oh my God. How much?
Let's
Don't
see.
pay too much. Don't overpay.
Let's see if I can.
Don't
You know,
overpay.
albums like that. A lot of times, the hard to find ones. A lot of times,
Hold on.
a
I'm
record
gonna get it.
company.
Hold on one second. I
Okay.
haven't looked at it in a while. Hold on.
Okay. All right.
Hold on back. Let me put my headphones back.
Okay.
Hold on. You can edit some of this. Sorry.
That's
You're making
fine.
your work here.
Nah.
If you notice that basketball, that's a Michael Jordan basketball. My wife used to work with Michael Jordan.
Wow.
That's pretty
You know,
cool.
I actually saw. I actually saw Michael Jordan playing golf on a golf course in Sanford, North Carolina, one time.
Wow, that's cool.
Yeah.
But check out here, Valentine. Let's check this out. So vinyl, back cover.
Yeah.
It's pretty cool. I have taken it out before, but the question is where are the liner notes? Are they here? That's pretty cool, right? Vinyl
Oh
is what a
yeah.
crazy thing, vinyl. Man, look how
And
nice and sleek.
I
It's
never cared
European.
anything. I never cared anything. Wow, look how shiny it is.
I know. I don't think it's
Nice.
ever been played, this thing. Hold on,
I
what
never
is it?
cared anything about vinyl until about the last 5 or 6 years ago, and we just happened to be at a flea market, and guy had some old vinyl,
Hmm.
Dockin and Rat.
Oh, that's
Look at
cool.
there.
Yeah,
So I
if you
got
see,
them.
yeah, if you see vinyl now, buy it. But this is the liner notes, pretty cool. My sister, my parents' house. My dad and they sold their house a couple of years back, and I found like all these Bruce Springsteen. Like my sister, my mother loves Bruce Springsteen. I found a lot of like all these really cool like original '80s Bruce Springsteen stuff. That was kind of cool.
I try to buy vinyl. My whole room is vinyl records around the ceiling and all. I got Dockin, Rat, Motley Crue. I was always big into like Lillian Axe and Vane and places. But I'm trying to get a Vane record. A lot of the hard to find ones. Sometimes they get reissued.
Right? Yeah.
Bands will reissue, and I don't mind having a reissue album whatsoever as long
Yeah.
as I
Whatever.
I have I actually have the vinyl album. So,
You know
but
who
that's
was
the
really good that I never really appreciated also? Like, I mean, it's still interesting and heavy. Striper. They're really good. I never, I don't know why. Maybe the whole, here's a funny story. I had a Charvel guitar. I don't know, guitar people. I had my first Charvel I saved up. I got this guitar, and it was like a black and yellow, like, looked like a highway sign, a chevron black and yellow. And it was
Mhm.
cool. At the time, it was pre-Striper. I was in, like, I think a senior in high school. I saved, got this guitar. This job, it was, I mean, in fact, foolishly sold it. It was a great guitar. But here's the thing, it became, when Striper came out, I swear to God, I couldn't play the guitar because it was like, people were like, what, it was like, all of a sudden it was like, that they trademarked black and yellow stripes. I was like,
Yeah.
son of a bitch. So now, either way, I was like ashamed, I was like embarrassed to play the guitar, so I sold it. But meanwhile, now it's probably, I wish I had it. But either way,
I was talking about Striper. I did a podcast one time, just me, and I was talking about Striper and how hard, I have to imagine how hard it was playing in Hollywood. You know, their Christ is in their message
right,
that they, and that's there's nothing wrong with that,
right.
you know. But they were playing. I read an article. They played a gig at the Troubadour, and the band they opened up for was Wasp.
It's hysterical, right? That's pretty funny.
I said, you got heaven and a
In
little
heaven
bit
and
of
hell, right?
hell working against each other.
Wasp, I listen, respect them, but I never quite really dug into the Wasp.
I like some older Wasp, but then that music, Blackie Lawless's music turned in a whole nother dark direction.
I
I
don't, they were
mean,
just too bizarre. I don't know. I just never, they never quite did it for me. But Striper, they were just good old fashioned. They were really good. But they looked cool as hell. They had always had great guitar sounds. I mean, like
yeah.
Oz Fox and Michael Striper,
Mhm.
great, and the drummer, right? Whatever. They were great.
I got to see them at M3 this past year. That's the first
Uh,
time I've ever saw Striper, and they're something else. It's like I told my wife, it's like, people people made fun of them for the simple fact that they were a Christian rock band, but people, they still sold out every show they went to because people liked what they sounded like.
yeah,
They weren't
I didn't think
necessarily listening to the lyrics.
did people. I didn't realize people made fun of them. I thought they were super popular. I didn't realize people made fun of them.
Well, they were, but just from what I read, that they were because of the fact that they were singing about Jesus.
I don't think interesting enough, I don't know that everyone knew that, but I don't think anybody in my world, like no one cared. It was like, okay,
That's what
cool.
that's my whole point. Even the
Better than
people that
some
listen
cheesy
to
love
them,
song. It was better, at least they had some integrity. You know what I'm saying? So I don't think people care. The people who I know who like Strapper, and myself included, like, okay, I don't, they're like, it didn't even like phase anybody in
right?
my little world. I mean, you knew they were, but they weren't like, I don't know. I didn't take them as a Christian rock band. They were like a rock band who sang about God was in their message. I don't know. It was either way. I'm not sure, but either way, I was a later fan of Striper. I wasn't always in the big, but I always thought they were just looked and sounded so cool, man.
And they got some great music. So
But again, I
I
was
got
sort of pissed at them because I had to get rid of my nice Chevelle. So
and
maybe that was it.
now you wish you had it, right?
Yeah. Oh my God, I do. Yes, I tried to find it. I put it out in the world, all these different groups and these guitar forums and groups had people trying to help me find it. We can't. It hasn't surfaced yet.
And it's probably worth a lot of money now.
Probably worth. Yeah, definitely is. Yeah.
I know I didn't have a guitar, but I used to race BMX bikes back when
Right.
I was in high school. And I want to get the actual manufactured bike that I raced just because I
Right.
want it.
Right.
And I wish I'd have never gotten rid of it because I
Right.
actually saw the frame, just the frame on eBay was $5,000, just the
Right.
frame.
It's about right.
And I had the whole bike. So there's
Right.
no telling what it would be worth now, but
Same as this guitar. I think I paid $600, which at the time I was like, that was like a big deal.
oh yeah.
But now it's probably worth, I don't know, not 6,000, but it's probably worth $3,000-4,000 that guitar.
But you just don't know. You just didn't
Yeah.
want to look
Either
like
way, I
Striper.
enjoyed it. I liked it. But again, because of Striper, I sold the guitar. I swear.
I got one more question for you.
Sure, man. No, all good.
If you could start a rumor about
Whoa,
yourself, what
a
would it
rumor.
be?
Would it be a fake? So it's not true, or
You just starting a rumor that's not true. What would it be?
holy crap? That's a crazy question. Um, it's not true. Holy moly. Wow. I don't even know the answer to that one. A rumor. So it has to be something I'm going to put out in the world, but it's not true about me. So I want it to be positive or something flattering. That like
Yes.
maybe like I invented something. Like he invented like saran wrap or something crazy, like a silly, like something like what people would say, wow, he's really smart or something like that. Something like that. So it's a rumor that I invented some kind of household item. That would be it. I
Well,
don't, he invented Velcro, something like that. That kind of
the,
something like that.
the reason I ask you that is I'm trying to read about doing podcasts, and it says put a couple of silly things in there just to kind of break. And one of them was what's one food you would have to take on a deserted island? That's the only thing you could eat every day. What would it be?
Whew, that's a good question too. But you have to eat it every day, so you can't. Of course, you can't say pizza because if that'd be good for a day. Um, you want it to be healthy. Wow, I guess you have to go with like grilled chicken. I don't know what, I'm not sure what the
Grilled
answer
chicken.
is. Or
Just
bananas? Maybe
just
bananas, a lot of
crazy.
bananas.
And one of them was if you could have
These are good. I
lunch,
like these questions.
if you could have lunch
Yes.
with any fictional or historical character, person in history or fictional, who would it be?
Can I be a group? I would go Lennon or McCartney, one of the two of them.
One of the two of them. Just
I'd
see,
probably
these are
say
just
probably have to go John Lennon just because you have to say or McCartney, one of those guys, like the historical or like Jimmy Page, somebody of that one of those three guys. But back to go back to my rumor answer, I'm gonna go with Velcro. Adam Holland invented Velcro.
invented Velcro. There you go. I never knew that you invented
Exactly.
Velcro,
See
but
that? Now you know that.
well, have a good day, sir.
Okay, man. Nice talking to you.
It's a
Let me, and
pleasure
by the way, let
meeting
me
you.
know whenever it's gonna air, though.
I will.
Do you have like a little logo or something? Like, do you have like a Hair Metal Rules podcast logo? Because I'll put it on my social media stuff. Send me
I,
that stuff.
I do. I'll send it to you in Instagram or I'll email it to you.
Yeah, and let me know whenever it's gonna air. No rush, whatever that is.
Okay. Well, thank you so much and have a great day, sir.
Okay, man. You too.
Bye bye.
I appreciate you listening to the most recent podcast episode. I sincerely thank Mr. Adam Holland for taking the time to speak with us in an interview today. Adam has a lengthy history in the music business with his time in Valentine and Open Skies. In 2009, Adam joined forces with former lead vocalist Steve Aoari after the two crossed paths after several years. They shared many common associations and a passion for live performance. So along with Steve, Adam is joined by his old friends and Valentine members Gerard Zappa and Craig Pullman, and they form the Steve Aoari Band, which currently tours worldwide. Please visit Adam Holland Music for all information and news about Adam and follow him on Instagram. Having the chance to speak with an amazing guitarist I have admired for years is special. Although Valentine came out towards the end of the hair metal era, their album and the music stood strong against any music released earlier in the decade. I want to play a few songs from the debut album by Valentine before we wrap up the podcast. This is Running on Luck Again and No Way. Listeners, I appreciate your support and hope things we discussed on the show bring back some great memories for you. Please do me a huge favor. Leave me feedback, rate the podcast, and maybe post a comment on the platform you listen to. It would mean so much to me. Until next time, keep rocking and stay tuned for more shows filled with exciting talks about your favorite hair metal bands and maybe a guest or two from time to time. Until next time, so long and God bless you all.